Hello everyone, this is Sarvesh, lecturer in Government Polytechnic, Station Kanpur. And the course is Reinforced Concrete Structure. And the topic is Design of Continuous Beams and Slabs. On completion of this lecture, you are able to know how to design a continuous slab, right? So in this today's lecture, we are going to discuss about the procedure of design of continuous slab as per uh, IS 456 2000 limit statement. Right. So before going to discuss, just recap what we were discussed in the last class. So in last class, in this topic, that is design of continuous beams and slabs, so we were discussed about the uh, design of continuous beams. So how to design a continuous beam based upon the limit state method as per the method proposed by IS 456 2000. How to use the coefficients, that is bending moment coefficients as well as the shear force coefficients proposed by IS 456 2000. And we have designed a singly reinforced continuous beam as well as doubly reinforced continuous beam also, right? And in that we have checked for shear design. We have designed shear also, and we have checked for stiffness, right? So last class, especially we have designed for doubly reinforced beam. So we have seen what are the different uh, uh, how to determine the different bending moments in different cases. And the main thing we were seeing that how to check or how to design whether it is a doubly reinforced beam or singly reinforced, right? So we have discussed the difference between doubly reinforced and singly reinforced, and how to identify whether it is a doubly reinforced beam or singly reinforced beam while design, right? As we discussed in last class, that means this depends upon the dimensions and the movement which is developed within the beam, right? So these things we were discussed in last class. Today, I'm going to discuss about the design procedure of a continuous slab as per IS 456 2000. So, in design of continuous slabs, the first is this is same for all the members because we are discussing from starting onwards. The first step is you have to assume the dimension, that means effective depth of the beam or effective depth of the slab or overall depth of the slab. So that we can assume based upon the stiffness value, right? So generally we will assume based on the stiffness value. So here also you should assume the thickness or effective depth of the slab or effective thickness of the slab, and determine the overall thickness of the slab. Or you can assume overall thickness of the slab and determine the effective thickness of the slab. That is what is effective depth of the slab. So in general practice for continuous slabs, we can assume the L by D ratio. That means L by D ratio, that is varies from L by 25 to L by 30. Right? This is only the general practice, right? Whatever the value you want, you can choose it based upon your experience, right? For that, from that you can determine the dimensions of the member. And remember that while designing the slabs, the width of the slab is assumed as 1 meter, right? We have to consider the width of the slab is 1 meter, right? So therefore, the width of the slab is 1 meter, and effective depth and overall depth you can calculate from by the assumption. And after determining the dimensions of the slab, then you need to determine the effective span, So here it is a continuous slab. So there are a number of panels are there, right? Like panels means panel means suppose sorry, it is a slab. So there are different number of panels, right? So this is called as one panel. One, two, four panels are there, right? So you need to determine the effective span for each panel separately, right? If it is equal span, then there is no issues. You can calculate only one. If it is other case, then you need to determine the um, for all different. Then you need to determine for all panels separately. And one more thing is here, if it is a one-way slab, so as I told you earlier, so there are two types of slab based upon the load transformation, right? Or in terms of the bending, right? So there are two types of slabs, that is one-way slab and two-way slab. So if how to classify those? If the L y by Lx is less than or equal to 2, then that should be designed as two-way slab. If Ly by Lx is greater than 2, and that should be designed as one-way slab, right? That means the in one-way slab, this is one-way slab, this is two-way slab, right? So one-way slab, the load is transferred in only one direction, that is in shorter span direction. In two-way slab, the load is transferred in two directions. That means longer span as well as shorter span, right? So if it is a one-way slab, the effective span should be calculated only in shorter direction. That means if this is a your panel, so this is the shorter direction, this is longer. This is Ly, this is L. Always always Ly is the longer span direction, Lx is the shorter span direction, right? So if it is a one-way slab, you need to determine the effective span for shorter span, right? Because the bending occurs only in this direction. Right? If it is a two-way slab, so therefore you need to calculate the effective span for all the panels in both the direction. That means along longer span direction, along this direction, and along this direction also, right? So that you should keep it in your mind while designing the continuous slabs. Is just similar to the design of two-way slab and one-way slab what we were discussing earlier, right? So you need to determine the effective span in both the directions, the two-way slab, and only one direction, that is shorter span direction if it is a one-way slab, right? And here, the one thing is the determination of the effective span is depends upon the thickness of the support. So that means if this is suppose because the slab should be supported on some intermediate supports, right? So the calculation of effective span is depends upon the thickness of span, right? If the thickness of span is less than the 1/12 of the clear span. That means the width of the support. The width of the support is less than the 1/12 of the clear span. Then the effective span should be calculated. It is same as your simply supported. That means center to center distance between the supports or clear span plus effective depth, whichever is less. That should be considered as your effective span. When if the width of the support is less than the 1/12 of the clear span, right? If the width of the support is greater than the 1/12 of the clear span or 600 mm, whichever is less, so in that case, you need to calculate the effective span. Again, there are two cases to try. So that is if the supports are wider than 1/12 of the clear span or 600 whichever is less, then there are two cases. That means for end spans, in one end is fixed and other end is continuous. For end spans, one end is fixed and other end is continuous, or for all other intermediate spans, the effective span is equal to clear span between the support, right? When if the width of the support is greater than 1/12 of the clear span or 600 whichever is less. In that cases, if one end is fixed and other end is continuous, or for all other intermediate spans, the effective span will become clear span support, right? Suppose if another case is for end spans with one end free and other end is continuous, other end is continuous. Therefore, the effective span will become as clear span plus half of the effective depth, or clear span plus half of the width of discontinuous supports, whichever is less. That should be considered as your effective span, right? So for end spans with one end free and other end is continuous, then effective span equal to clear span plus half of the effective depth, or clear span plus half of the width of the discontinuous supports. So whichever is this, that should be considered as your effective span, right? So like this, you need to determine the effective span of the slab. And remember, these conditions should be applied for longer span direction as well as shorter span direction, right? If it is only one-way slab, then you need to determine only in shorter span direction. If it is two-way slab, then you need to determine in both the directions, right? So this is what you need to determine the effective span, right? So after determining the effective span, then you need to determine the loads, right? So here, so based upon the type of slab and everything, you need to calculate the loads on the slab. So that should be calculated into two loads separately. That means fixed loads and not fixed loads, right? So generally fixed loads are all permanent loads, right? That means which are present throughout the lifespan of the member, right? So that is dead loads or any other superimposed loads will be considered as fixed loads. Imposed loads are generally live loads. That means sometime may present, sometime may absent, right? And that should be calculated, and based upon these values, you need to determine the factored loads, right? By application of the partial safety factor for live loads and dead loads. So as per IS 456 2000, the partial safety factor for live loads and dead loads is 1 point, right? So apply those factor partial safety factor and determine the factored loads, right? So next is after determining this one, then you need to determine the bending moments and shear force. So, so generally the bending moments and shear forces for continuous slab can be determined by using the IS 456 2000 method, because this method is very quick, right, as compared to other methods. You can use other methods also, that is moment distribution method, Conness method, or substitute trend method, whatever the method is feasible for you, and you can use that method and determine the shear force and bending. But whatever the method which is proposed by the IS 456 2000, it is very easy and simple, right? So to determine the shear forces and bending moments, IS 456 2000 presented the shear force and bending moment coefficients in table number 12 and 13. So based upon your requirements, you can take the bending moment coefficients or shear force coefficients from the table and determine the shear forces and bending. Right. So these are the shear force. These are the bending moment coefficients. So in bending moment coefficients, there are two types: span moments, support. Again, these span moments and support moments are further divided into near middle of end span, at middle of interior span, right? And for support moments, at support next to the end support, at other interior support, right? So you can determine this is for fixed and this is for not fixed. These coefficients for fixed, these are for not fixed. So depending upon your requirement, you can determine the span moments as well as support, and based upon that, you can determine the uh, area of steel and other calculations, right? So for near middle of end span, for fixed it is 112, and for not fixed it is 1 by 10. And at middle of interior span, that means for fixed, what is this one? Just I would like to draw a diagram for clear understanding. What is this one? So suppose this is your uh, let us say cross section of your slab, continuous slab. Let us say there are four slabs. One, two, three, four. And remember, this method is applicable. The limitations are same, whatever we were discussed in beams, that is continuous beams. So just rewind, what are those limits? One thing is, first, the beam or slab should have minimum 3 spans. Second one is, so it should consist only the usual loads. And third limitation is, the difference between any two spans should not be greater than the 15% of the longest span in the beam. So these three conditions should be satisfied, right? Then only you can apply this coefficients. Otherwise, this method is not applicable for the specific problem, right? So uh, near middle of end span. That means these one and this one are the end spans. So near the middle of end span means here and here. To determine these bending moment, you can use this coefficient near middle of end span. At middle of interior span means these two are interior span. So whatever the bending moment coefficients corresponding to this one is useful for here to determine the bending moment at here and at middle of other interior span. Next one is at support next to the end support. This is a support next to the end support is this one. This is next to the end support, and this is also next to the end support. And whatever the coefficients here, these are useful to determine the bending moment at this place, right? And next is at other interior supports. So this is one is the other interior supports. So to determine the bending moment at here, you can use these coefficients, right? These are the at other interior supports, right? So next next one is calculation of shear forces. So these are the coefficients for determination of shear forces uh, for continuous slabs. So this is for end support at end support. This is at all other interior supports. This is end support next to the end support. So there are two, that is outside and inside. right? What is outside and inside? So let us say this. So if we draw the diagram, sorry, right, then let us say example there are three spans. So at end support, that means here and these two are end support. So if you use these coefficients, you will get the shear force at this side and this side. At all other interior supports we discuss, and at support next to the end support, this support next to the end support is sorry this one and this one. So if you use these coefficients, you will get the uh, shear force at support next to the end support. And but here there are two types: outer side and inner side. What is outer side and inner side? So this is the support. So for this support, this is the end one, right? So this will become as your this side, the bending moment. For this side is called as your outer side. On this side, that because at this support there are two shear force will come from this span and this span, right? So this will become as outer, this will become as inner, right? So if you calculate the shear forces, both are at the same support, but from this side and from this side, right? So you can use these coefficients for determining the shear forces at different locations, right? So based upon that, you can design the shear bend. Now coming to after determining the shear forces and bending moments, the next step is you need to so after determining the shear forces and bending moment, the next step is we need to determine the depth required. That means in first steps we have assumed the uh, depth of the slab, right? So here, so you need to check whether whatever the dimensions you have provided in first step are sufficient to resist the bending moments which are developed within the beam or not, right? So for that, what you have to do is you just uh, identify the maximum bending moment from all the because we have calculated the span moments and support moments separately. So from that you can determine the maximum bending moment, right? So that maximum bending moment is, let us say, mu max, right? So that mu max should be equal to mu limit, right? So that means by equating these two, you can determine the depth required. Why we are equating only this one? Because the mu limit is nothing but it is the moment of resistance corresponding to the balance section. That means the depth of neutral axis is xu max. That is limiting depth of neutral axis, right? So that limiting depth of neutral axis can be calculated from IS 456 2000 based on the uh, grade of steel, right? So why I am comparing only this one? Because this is the maximum moment of resistance. That means this is the limiting moment of resistance, right? We cannot accept more than that. So if and this should be equal to the maximum moment of resistance which is developed within the stack. So I am calculating the depth required corresponding to the maximum bending moment which is developed within the beam. Right? Why I am taking only maximum? Because if you have a beam or slab, whatever it is, if the slab is safe with respect to maximum as compared to all the bending moments, so obviously it will become safe for other cases because it is the bending moment is less than the maximum in all other cases. So that is why I am taking this maximum, right? So equate your maximum bending moment equal to mu limit for determining the depth required. Then after that, check whether your D required is greater than the, if your D required is less than D provided, or D required is greater than the D provided. That you need to check. Suppose if D required is less than the D provided, that means whatever the D required to resist maximum bending moment is less than the whatever the D provided, then your beam is safe. Because whatever required, you are providing little bit more than the required. So that means it will become safe. Hence you can go for further steps. If D required is greater than the D provided, then the beam will fail. Because to resist this much of bending moment, you need this much of D required, but you are providing less than this one. Suppose let us say, for example, to resist this much of bending moment, I need, let us say, 100 mm thickness is required. This is called D required, right? But I have provided only, let us say, 80 mm, right? So what will happen? Due to the maximum bending moment, so you are providing 80 mm, that means it will fail. The slab will fail, right? So that is why you need to redesign your slab by increasing the depth of the slab, right? So that means you have to go to the your first step. That means where we have assumed the dimensions of the member or slab. So then again you need to calculate the effective span, because if the D changes, dimension changes, then the effective span will change and loads will change. If loads changes, then the bending moments will change. Shear force then again you need to calculate everything, and after that again you need to check whether your D required is less than or equal to D provided or not. Right? So this is a repetitive process. So until the conditions are satisfied, you need to repeat it. Right? That means D required should always be less than or equal to D provided. Then only your number is safe. Right? So after satisfying this condition, then you need to go for further steps. What are the further steps next? Next step is you need to determine the what? Reinforcement. Yeah, the MU limit, whatever I told you just now, MU limit is not max. This is MU limit. Sorry, MU max equal to MU limit, right? So that MU limit is depends upon the grade of steel which is provided in IS 456 2000. This table is already available in your IS 456 2000. That is F of I was this is XU max. So for 250 grade steel, 0.5 PV. For 415 steel is 0.48 B. For 500 steel it is 0.46. So substitute these values in your MU limit. So what is the formula for MU limit? I hope you already remember. So MU limit is equal to 0.36 FCK into U max into D minus 0. Right. So in this equation, you just substitute the XU max value corresponding to your type of grade of steel and find out the simplify the equation. So I have simplified it and presented here some of the values. Right. So for M20, this is for general. For 250 grade steel, this is 0.148 FCK into BD square. For Fe415, this is 0.138 FCK into BD square, and 500 0.133 FCK into BD square. good memory, you can remember this one, or you can take the values from IS code and substitute in this equation and determine the MU limit value. Right? So therefore, next calculate the skill. So here there are two types of skills in SAPs. That means along the longest span direction as well as shortest span direction. If it is a one-way slab, you need to calculate the, or you need to provide the main reinforcement in shortest span direction, and in longer span direction, you need to provide the distribution reinforcement, right? So if it is a one-way slab, you need to calculate the main reinforcement only in shortest span direction. If it is a two-way slab, you need to determine the reinforcement in main reinforcement in two directions, longer span direction as well as shorter span direction, right? That you should remember. So that can be determined by corresponding moments are there, so because we have calculated the span moment separately and um, support moment separately. So you need to calculate the reinforcement at each one. So that mu is equal to 0.87 f of phi into A of st into d 1 minus f of phi into A of st phi fc to d. So from this formula you can substitute mu here and substitute from this formula everything is known except A of st. So find out the A of st required, right? So how this formula came? So don't confuse it. This is just derived from the main formula, that is the bending moment mu is equal to what? 0.87, that is tension force into the 0.87 into f of phi into f st into 3 minus 0.42 x, right? So what is XU? Don't substitute whatever the XU we just calculated for determining the A required, right? That is only for checking purpose. But the reinforcement should be calculated based upon the actual depth of neutral axis, that is XU. And this XU should be calculated by equating the compressive force equal to tension force, right? That is 0.36 XK P into XU equal to 0.87 f of phi into f s. So from this formula you can find out the XU, and that XU should be substituted here. So therefore, and simplify it, you will get this equation. It is not new. It is only the concept is the same concept, but just simplify it, right? Because here XU is unknown and A of ST is also unknown. So two unknowns. That is why I am making it to single equation by substituting XU in terms of A of ST. So if you simplify, you will get this equation. So from this equation, everything is known except A of ST. Find out A of ST, right? Then after calculation of A of ST for different cases, then you need to calculate the space. And before that, you need to check whether your A of ST is within the permissible limits or not. How to check? As per IS 456-2000 for slab, the main reinforcement should be placed in shortest span direction, and for two-way slab, the main reinforcement should be provided in both directions. Just now I told you now. And the minimum AST, whatever the reinforcement you have calculated, and that should be checked with minimum and maximum. The minimum main reinforcement in slabs is 0.15% of BD or cross sectional area if it is a mild steel, right? If it is a mild steel, the minimum percentage of steel is 0.15% of BD. And for HYSD bars, the minimum reinforcement is 0.12% of gross cross section area, And for maximum reinforcement, the main reinforcement should not be exceed 4% of gross cross section, right? So it should not be greater than this one and should not be less than this one. So whatever the reinforcement you have calculated here, you need to check for minimum and maximum. So your AST should be greater than AST minimum and it should be less than AST max, right? So if it is satisfied, then you can go for further steps. That means you need to calculate the space instead of calculation of number of bars, right? Because in beams we have to calculate the number of bars, but here you need to calculate the number of spacing, right? So that should be calculated this the spacing of bars. So that is A of ST small a st by capital A st into 1000. A of ST is the area of single bar. This 1000 is nothing but your B because we are considering 1 meter width. Yeah. And there are another codal provisions for main reinforcement. So from this you can calculate the spacing. And as per the IS 456-2000, the main steel should not be more than the following. That means 3D or 300 mm, whichever is less. 3 into effective depth of the slab and 300 mm, whichever is less. So calculate all these three spacing out of which provide minimum. Whatever the minimum you get it from this three, that should be provided. So that will satisfy all the conditions. Right? So this is how you need to determine the steel required in tension. After that, you need to calculate the distribution reinforcement, right? Generally, the distribution reinforcement is provided uh, as minimum reinforcement, right? So the minimum reinforcement for HYSD bars is 12% of BD, and for mild steel it is 0.15%, sorry, not 12%, 0.12% of BD, and here it is 0.15% of BD. Can be used as a distribution steel slabs. And again here also we need to determine the spacings. The spacing same as whatever we have calculated, that is small AST by capital AST into 1000, that is the spacing required. And again the spacing should not be greater than 5D and 450 mm, whichever is less. So compare all these three spacings and out of which you need to provide the minimum one. So it will satisfy all the conditions. So this is how we need to determine the distribution in slabs, right? So after determining this, then you need to go for check for sorry, sorry, check for stiffness, right? So that means whatever the slab you have designed, that should be safe with respect to the stiffness. So calculate the percentage of steel because the allowable, the basic value L by D for a continuous slabs is 26 into modification factor. And this modification factor is depends upon the percentage of steel provided in tension zone at mid-span, right? Because the maximum deflections occurs in mid-span. So therefore, you need to calculate the percentage of steel and go to the figure 4. So from this figure, you need to determine the modification factor, percentage of steel, and again one more thing is f of s value also you need to calculate, right? So f of s is equal to 0.58 into f of y into area of steel required and provided. So corresponding to the percentage of steel and f of s value, find out the modification factor. Then from that, you can determine the basic value, right? that is L effective by D ratio. Similarly, calculate the what is the L effective by D ratio, actual L effective by ratio within the slab, that is L effective by D ratio. Generally, for slabs, we will consider the L effective in shorter span direction. In two-way slab also, we need to consider it in shorter span also, as per the IS 456 also. So the condition is actual L effective by D ratio should be less than the permissible value. Then only it is safe against stiffness. Otherwise, it is fail. If it is greater than, then you need to redesign your slab by changing the dimensions. That means you go to the first step and do all the steps, right? So after checking the stiffness, then you need to go for shear force calculation. That means we need to check for shear, right? So for calculation of shear, you need to calculate the nominal shear stress, that is tau B. Tau B. Tau B is equal to BU by TD. I don't use this formula, this is some formula. Okay. So tau V is equal to BU by TD. So that VU is nothing but your factored shear force that can be calculated from the table 13 as per IS 456 2000, right? So out of which maximum you can take it, and corresponding VU you can calculate the tau V is equal to VU by D, right? Then calculate the tau C value. This tau C value should be calculated from the table 19. Table 19. From this table, based upon the corresponding to the percentage of steel and grade of concrete, determine the tau C value. That is, tau C is nothing but the shear stress in concrete, right? Just calculate the percentage of steel, tension zone, and grade of concrete and determine the values. If it is in between, you can interpolate and determine the values for in between, right? So after determining the tau C value, then you need to determine the one more factor called, this is the K value. K is the factor for solid slabs, right? So it is depends upon the thickness of slab. That means, so your tau C into K, right? So tau C is nothing but, K is nothing but this is the factor for solid slabs. Depends upon the thickness. If the thickness is more than 300, K is equal to 1. If it is 275, 1.05. If it is 250, 1.1. If it's 225, 1.5. 200, 1.2. If it is 1.75, 1.25. If it is less than 150, then K is equal to 1.5. Right? So then you need to calculate the actual tau C in slabs. That means tau C into K, you will get the tau C in slabs. Then calculate the tau C max, right? You need to calculate the tau C max and check. So the check is whatever your tau B should be less than or equal to K into tau C. Then it is safe in shear. Otherwise, it is fail due to shear. Again, you need to redesign your section. Right? So like that, you need to check for shear also, right? So after checking the shear, then one more check is left, that is development length, right? So that your development length LD should be less than or equal to M1 by B plus L0, where LD is development length of the bar, M1 is the movement, bending moment at the section considered, B is the shear force at that section considered, L0 is the sum of anchorage, right? And check for shear and check generally check for shear and check for development length in slabs we will omit it because the slab, whatever the reinforcement you are providing in slab is more than sufficient to take the shear forces, as well as it has enough for development, enough space to provide the development. So that is why in slabs generally we will neglect these steps. But if you want, you can check it again for accuracy. Right? So this is how you need to design the continuous slabs by using the limit state method. Right? So for this, I would like to conclude this class. So before going to close, so I just want to summarize what we were discussed. So we were discussed about the design of continuous slab. That means what are the different steps you need to follow to design a continuous slab as per IS 45000. And what are the codal provisions you need to remember while designing the uh, continuous slabs, right? That means the what are the limitations of the method that used for determination of bending moment and shear force coefficients, how to calculate the shear force and bending moment, and how to determine the area of steel in main reinforcement as well as distribution reinforcement, then how to check for shear and stiffness. Sorry. At last, how to check for development and pulse. Right? So these things we were discussed in this class. Next class we will discuss. We will solve some example problems for a better understanding.